My name is Elena Morgan, and for most of my life, I believed that staying quiet made me the better person. I believed that if I gave enough, they'd see my worth. If I stayed out of the way, I wouldn't cause more problems. If I forgave, again and again, they'd love me back, the way they loved each other. I believed that being the good daughter meant swallowing disappointment, letting the insults pass, wiring the money, showing up when no one else did. But this story? It's not about forgiveness. It's about facts. It's about what happens when you let someone pull every thread of your life and then watch as the whole thing unravels, right in front of them. I didn't ask for a fight, but when they lied about my mother's health, took $20,000, humiliated me in front of Riley, and then tried to ruin my name online, I stopped being quiet, and for the first time in years, I started keeping receipts. If you've ever been made to feel like your kindness was weakness, if you've ever stayed silent just to keep peace that was never yours to begin with, then this story is for you. Riley had just curled into the corner of the couch, watching an old Disney movie, and I was halfway through rinsing a coffee mug when the screen lit up. Harper's name. 5 words. I stared at the message for a full 5 seconds before my thumb tapped it open. No emoji, no dramatics. Just urgent, clipped. Strange. Harper wasn't known for subtlety. If anything, her texts were usually half scream, half poem. A full-blown drama queen. So why did this message feel different? It was too quiet to be her. I called. Straight to voicemail. Again. Still nothing. My chest tightened. I walked into the living room and glanced at Riley, her small face glowing from the screen. "Sweetheart," I said carefully, "I need to step out for a bit. Grandma's not feeling well. Aunt Harper says she's in the hospital." She didn't even look away from the TV. "Okay, Mom, I'll stay with Eli?" "Yes," I nodded, grabbing my phone and opening my bank app, heart thudding harder than I cared to admit. I scrolled through my contacts and tapped Harper's Venmo. The label said, "Hospital emergency, billing hold. $20,000. Gone in 3 seconds." I paused. Was I being stupid? Was I walking into something? I texted Eli, "Need you to watch Riley tonight. Mom's in the hospital. I'm heading to Fresno." Eli responded almost instantly with a thumbs up and, "Got her." Still no word from Harper. Not even a thank you. Not even a location. That's when the chill arrived. Not in my spine, but in my gut. I grabbed my coat and keys and headed to the door, but paused just before I turned the knob. A habit. Always was. Ever since I installed the smart system, I'd peek at the cam history before leaving. I opened the app. There she was. Harper. In her oversized hoodie, dark jeans, and green sneakers. She had buzzed my apartment door exactly 23 minutes ago. The footage was clear. Her face, her frown, the way she kept glancing over her shoulder. She hadn't knocked. Just stood there for a minute. Then left. I blinked. She had been here. She hadn't said a word. I played the clip again. Slower this time. Same clothes as her Instagram story earlier that day. A pumpkin spice latte in hand, captioned, "Ugh, traffic." Posted at 4:47 p.m. from a coffee shop near my apartment. My stomach coiled. I reached for my phone, texted her again. "Where exactly is Mom? Which hospital?" No response. I stared at the video one more time, fingers trembling now. Something had cracked wide open, and the air suddenly felt like glass. "Wait, she was never at the hospital," I whispered, still clutching my car keys. "There must be a mistake," I said, staring at the dining table. 12 chairs. None for me. The scent of roasted turkey, Sweet potato casserole, and spiced cider filled the air as I stepped into the house I hadn't entered in 3 years. The walls were the same soft cream, but the silence that followed my arrival was new, thick and immediate, like everyone had been waiting to see if I'd really show up. I wasn't even sure why I had come. Maybe some desperate part of me still wanted to believe this family could act like one. But now, standing at the edge of the ornate dining room, I saw it clearly. They had counted, and I was not one of the 12. Harper looked up from her seat, already positioned at the side closest to Dad, of course. She arched an eyebrow and twisted her wine glass between her fingers. "You came." My mother appeared beside her, tucking a napkin into her lap, and gave me the kind of smile people use when they're talking to an acquaintance in a parking lot. "You came so suddenly, Elena. We weren't prepared." Not prepared? I had wired $20,000 less than a week ago. For a hospital emergency? That never existed. I scanned the table again. Dad didn't even look up. Just cut into his ham like nothing had happened. Some cousins smiled awkwardly. Uncle Jared gave a polite nod. No one moved. No one offered a seat. I looked to the far end of the table and spotted a high chair for Ella, Harper's toddler. Even she had a spot. But me? "Where should Riley sit?" I asked, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. Harper stood, smoothing the front of her wine-red blouse. "Actually, Riley will be in the den with the other kids. That's where they'll be more comfortable." "She's 11, I said. "She's fine," Harper shot back, already turning toward the hallway. "Ben will show her." A lanky teenager I didn't recognize appeared and gestured vaguely. Riley glanced up at me, unsure but trusting, and I gave her a small nod. "It's okay," I murmured. She disappeared down the hall and I was left alone, standing like an intruder in my own family's home. "I transferred 20 grand for Mom's hospital bills," I said, voice rising a notch. "No one's going to acknowledge that?" Harper turned, smirking. "That's my friend's account. You didn't ask." My mouth went dry. "You lied." She shrugged, then stepped into the center of the table, all eyes on her now. "You never belonged here, Elena. You chose your little coding job over this family. We're Morgans. We build things. Legacies. Not apps for old people." My mother didn't stop her. My father said nothing. Every fork paused midair. Every gaze slid away, as if I were a ghost they had agreed to stop believing in. "I wish you were never born," Harper spat. No one gasped. No one even blinked. My skin burned with something far colder than rage. It was clarity. I turned, walked down the hall, found Riley sitting cross-legged on the carpet next to a plate of cold fries. She looked up. "Are we staying?" I took her hand. "We're leaving." They didn't call. Not even once. 3 days had passed since I left that house, holding Riley's hand like it was the only anchor to the reality I wanted to believe in. Since then, nothing. No missed calls, no texts, not even a passive-aggressive emoji from Mom. It was as if I'd been surgically removed from the family, neatly and without ceremony. I sat curled on the couch, still in the same sweater from 2 days ago, watching Riley at the coffee table with her crayons. She was drawing something, figures holding hands under a tree, but her brows were furrowed like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't understand. "Mom?" she said, not looking up. "Was I not invited to the dinner?" Her voice was soft. Too soft. Like if she said it louder, it might break her. I swallowed hard. "You were invited, sweetheart. They just forgot how to act like it." She nodded slowly, then added another figure to her drawing. A little one, off to the side. Alone. I stood, stretched, walked to the kitchen and poured water just to do something. Anything. My phone buzzed. One new message from Julia. Julia Kwan. You need to see this. A link. I tapped it and read it loaded, showing a post titled, "When the Estranged Daughter Comes Home Demanding Praise." I blinked. The tone was unmistakable, passive-aggressive, self-righteous, dripping in superiority masked as hurt. A paragraph about some people thinking money excuses years of abandonment, followed by a string of smug commenters praising Harper M123 for handling it with grace. I read every word, twice, then a third time. My stomach knotted. Julia's face appeared on my screen. She'd video called. "I know that tone," she said. "It's Harper. And get this. Some replies are from sock puppet accounts. They're all linked to one IP. One of them uses her old blog's recovery email." "You traced that?" I blinked. Julia shrugged. "I still work in data privacy, remember?" I stared at the ceiling. So she's not done. Now she wants to ruin me publicly. "She's painting you as some unstable money-waving black sheep," Julia said, fuming. "What do you want to do?" I paused. Riley had moved on to drawing flowers. She didn't know, yet, that her family's betrayal was expanding into digital graffiti for strangers to gawk at. "I'm not going to respond," I said finally, pulling the laptop onto my lap. "Not yet." I opened a new folder, labeled it Harper. Evidence. I began screenshotting the post, the comments, the email trace. Julia raised an eyebrow. "You're going to let it ride?" I nodded slowly. "Let's give them enough rope." I pulled the bank statement. The money was gone the same night. $20,000, evaporated like steam off pavement. No record of hospital payments. No entry labeled emergency surgery. No mention of any clinic, doctor, or ambulance ride. Just one large transfer into Harper's account and, hours later, a purchase labeled MCM Beverly Hills, a luxury handbag boutique. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. The blood in my ears pounded louder than my thoughts. I exhaled sharply and picked up the phone. "Julia," I said when she picked up. "We're going deeper." Her voice crackled through the speaker. "Already ahead of you. I just got off the phone with one of Mom's neighbors, Mrs. Penrose. She said she saw your mom walking her poodle every morning last week. No ambulance. No fuss. She's not even sick," I muttered. "No wonder Harper wouldn't take calls, just texts." "Want me to check the electricity repair claim?" Julia asked, typing fast. "Remember Harper said the hospital bill got worse because the fuse shorted and Mom's oxygen generator failed? Do it." While she searched, I called Dr. Shale's office. The family doctor had seen Mom for 20 years. I used the same lie Harper had used on me. "Yes, this is Elena Morgan. I'm trying to confirm some information for insurance. Was my mother in your care recently?" A pause. Paper rustling. "No visits since late August," the receptionist replied. "Her last appointment was a blood pressure checkup." I hung up. Julia pinged back. "Found it. No electrician visited 1297 Brookdale Drive the entire month. The utility company tracks permit work. You'd need clearance for anything major. Harper's lying. All of it." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. So they'd played me. Used my guilt, my daughter's concern, my love. And now they were sitting around that long table passing cranberry sauce like nothing happened. The phone buzzed again. Harper. Incoming call. I hesitated. Picked up. "Well," she said, all sugary contempt. "Did you enjoy Thanksgiving?" I did. The silence was enlightening. "Still stuck on that money thing? God, Elena, are you really going to be dramatic?" "Just making sense of a few receipts," I said. She laughed. "So you still believe Mom's really sick?" I froze. Every syllable out of her mouth confirmed it. She wasn't hiding anymore. She didn't need to. My thumb brushed over the screen and hit record call. Thank you, I said quietly, a small smile forming as I leaned closer to the mic. That's all I needed. My silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. I stared at the family photo perched crookedly on my dresser. It was old, probably Thanksgiving 2005. Harper in her red velvet dress, all ruffles and smugness. Me in a stiff green sweater, arms crossed even then. We were both trying to win something we didn't understand. Recognition, maybe. I picked it up, studied the way I was half leaning out of frame, and placed it face down. By the time I arrived at Elderbright the next morning, Julia had already claimed the conference table with 2 coffees and a laptop open to a private Reddit thread titled Narrative Retaliation, a Strategic Memo. You named the plan? I asked, raising an eyebrow. I organize chaos. It's what I do. She grinned. I also brought options, public or private, podcast or press. I slid into the seat across from her, adjusting my blazer. Let's not make noise for noise's sake. Then make it for justice. Eli walked in, carrying Riley's forgotten lunchbox. She left it in my car, he said, setting it on the table. He gave my shoulder a squeeze. Whatever you choose to do, just know we're behind you. Riley and I both. He kissed my temple and left without another word. That kind of quiet support. That was everything. I turned to Julia. Podcast. Her eyes lit up. Anonymous? Yes, but I want control. Full control. No names yet. Just the story. The betrayal. The price women pay for being the reliable one. Let them recognize themselves in the mirror if they dare. Title? I didn't hesitate. The cost of being the good daughter. She smiled slowly. That'll sting in all the right places. By lunchtime, we had mapped out the arc of the series. One woman's journey through familial betrayal, financial manipulation, and finding her voice without yelling. Julia would produce and distribute it through discreet channels. No ads, no names, just truth. That night, after Riley went to bed, I lit a candle and opened my laptop. I typed the first few lines of the opening episode. I believed in loyalty more than logic. I gave without asking. And I watched them sharpen the knife with my generosity. Each keystroke felt like reclaiming breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I read it again, then added the working title at the top. The Cost of Being the Good Daughter. Episode 1, The Transfer. I stared at the screen. 10 days. That's all I needed. I mumbled, my voice steady, almost soft. But inside me, something had already begun to roar. I stared at the receipt Harper left behind. $6,400 for a medical emergency, not even a fake hospital name. The paper was crumpled, stained with a coffee ring, and wedged between the pages of an old planner Harper had left in Mom's side drawer. I hadn't even been looking for it, just flipping through out of habit. But there it was, her arrogance on paper. A receipt that wasn't even trying to be believable. No letterhead, no phone number, not even a hospital name. Just emergency fee, $6,400. I sat back, lit only by the blue glow of my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as my thoughts spun back to a memory I'd buried under layers of forgiveness. College, sophomore year. Harper had come home crying about being pregnant. Mom wired her $2,000 overnight. Turned out it was just a late assignment and a professor who didn't accept excuses. She'd lied. Then too. And I'd believed her. Then too. Julia's message dinged on the screen. Julia. You up? I found something. I answered with a quick call. There's a Reddit post from 2 nights ago, she said, before even saying hi. Anonymous, but the phrasing screams Harper. Read it, I said. She cleared her throat. Some people don't realize how damaging it is when siblings hold the family hostage with their bitterness, especially when they haven't been present for years. I didn't respond. She's positioning herself as the victim again, Julia added. Same tone, same cadence. Save it, all of it, I said, and record any edits or deletes. Already a folder named Harper. Evidence sat open on my desktop, lined with screenshots, PDF exports, and notes. I dragged in the Reddit post and tagged it December 3rd. I picked up the phone and dialed the bank. Hi, yes, this is Elena Morgan. I'd like a printed breakdown of the transaction I authorized on November 18th. Yes, the $20,000 transfer. As I waited on hold, I opened a new tab and searched for Simpson and Green LLP. I'd remembered the name from a podcast episode about financial fraud. They specialized in family-related abuse cases. By the time the teller returned with confirmation and mailing instructions, I had already drafted an email requesting a consultation. Then, Julia pinged me again. Julia, you're not gonna believe this. Harper did the exact same thing to Aunt Diane in 2020. Claimed mom had cancer, pocketed the money, and ghosted. My jaw tightened. Aunt Diane hadn't spoken to the family since Christmas 2020. I remembered wondering why. Mom had just said, she's difficult. But now it made sense. She wasn't difficult. She was done. Julia, I said, pulling my voice back to center. Send me that. The photo. The link. I need it all by Monday. I was no longer gathering facts. I was preparing a case. I put the phone down, saying nothing. Still recording. And Harper just kept talking. The cafe was almost empty. Just the low hiss of the espresso machine and a couple arguing quietly near the window. I picked a table close to the wall, my phone tucked under my cardigan sleeve, mic pointed upward, recording app running in the background. I'd practiced the setup too many times to fumble it now. Harper arrived 5 minutes late, her usual entrance, like she'd done me a favor by showing up at all. Her sunglasses stayed on as she sat across from me, waving at the barista like she owned the place. Coffee? She offered, already smirking. Or do you still do that oat milk nonsense? I didn't answer. She leaned back, removing her glasses with a theatrical sigh. You've been awfully quiet lately, Elena. And that silence? It's dangerous. You used to at least beg for an explanation. Still, I said nothing. Okay. She shrugged, as if indulging a child. Fine, let's get real. You sent me money. I used it. End of story. She sipped from her drink, a little foam clinging to her upper lip. You can try to make it about mom or morals or whatever righteous phase you're in now, but at the end of the day, you're still the stupid girl who believes her mother. My heart thudded, but my face didn't change. Just a small blink, a faint nod, enough to keep her going. You really think she's going to die soon? She chuckled. I thought you were smarter. She'll probably outlive us both. There it was. Clear. Smug. Admissible. I glanced toward the street, avoiding eye contact, letting her feel in control. The phone buzzed once under my sleeve, the preset timer to let me know 5 minutes had passed, long enough to catch whatever I needed. She kept talking. You know what's funny? She said, crossing her legs. You think I'm cruel, but you're the one who left. You're the one who turned her back on us. So don't pretend you're some moral hero. I stood up slowly, adjusted my coat. Didn't speak. She tilted her head, confused. That's it? I smiled once. Then walked past the coffee counter, past the couple by the window, out into the crisp air. A soft buzz in my pocket. I pulled the phone out and looked at the screen. Recording ready. 4A file saved successfully. I stayed up all night. Harper sent a second post. And this time, she tagged me. It was nearly 2 a.m. The apartment was silent except for the soft hum of the heater and the rhythmic clack of my fingers on the keyboard. I hadn't slept. Couldn't. Not after seeing what she'd done. Harper had uploaded a carousel of photos. Me at a family reunion in 2014, awkward and blurry, my eyes mid-blink. Another at my college graduation, cropped to exclude Riley in my arms. The caption read, "Some people will always be bitter. No matter how much you help them. Imagine being jealous of your own sister." Below it, she tagged me directly at Elena Morgan _. There was no hiding now. No more shadowboxing. She had just fired the first public shot. My inbox pinged. Julia had already seen it. "Want me to draft a response?" Her message read. I typed back, "No public response." "Not yet. But it's time." I pulled up the shared folder on my laptop and uploaded everything. Screenshots of Harper's Reddit post, the Facebook tag, and most importantly, the full audio recording from the coffee shop. Then I called the lawyer. It was late, but Simpson and Green offered a 24/7 line for ongoing litigation. A calm voice answered, and I explained everything. I forwarded the evidence, my voice firm, clear, unshaken. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was reacting. I was leading. Eli stepped into the room, rubbing his eyes. "You're still up?" I turned the laptop slightly so he could see the post. She tagged me this time. He leaned over, read the words, then turned to me without blinking. "We're not silent anymore," he said, then walked over and wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Let's finish this." The next morning, the legal team sent Harper a formal cease and desist letter, signed, sealed, delivered by email and hard copy. The subject line was sterile, but the message was not: ongoing defamation, digital harassment, and financial misconduct. A wave of relief washed over me. Brief, sharp, then replaced by anticipation. I opened my phone just to check if she'd seen it. She had. Because 2 hours later, Harper shared the Reddit post, complete with inflammatory captions and warped photos, to our old high school alumni group. Nearly 5,000 people, former classmates, teachers, PTA parents. This wasn't just public anymore. It was personal. And I smiled. She just declared war. The two companies I'm working with have requested a temporary suspension due to the online article. The words blurred as I reread them for the third time. My office was silent except for the low buzz of the ceiling lights and the muted clicks of Julia pacing behind me. The planning board on the far wall still had remnants of sticky notes, half erased, abandoned mid-thought when everything got pulled back. Suspended. Not canceled. Yet. But the language was careful, polite, and cold. It might as well have said, "We're stepping back until you clean up your mess." "Did you eat?" Julia asked quietly, placing a paper cup of coffee next to me. I didn't answer, just stared at the email. Lumina Foundation. Gone. Brighter Age Media. Gone. Two partners who'd supported Elderbright from the beginning. Now pulling back because a toxic Reddit post, some edited photos, and Harper's venomous narrative had stirred enough online bile to make them reassess optics. I'd built Elderbright from scratch, sacrificed nights with Riley, postponed trips, survived on coffee and certainty. And now, that certainty was leaking out of the room like cold air through a cracked window. Damon peeked in from the hallway, held up a thumb drive, then lowered it when he saw my face. "I can leave this here," he mumbled, placing it gently on the corner of the desk. "Whenever you're ready." When the door clicked shut behind him, Julia finally spoke again. "You can let them think whatever they want," she said, voice low but sharp. "Or make them remember who you are." I leaned back, closed my eyes. Let the weight settle for a second. Julia was right. Silence might have been a strategy, but it had its cost. And now, the cost had a number attached. I reached for the mic we used to record training clips for Elderbright tutorials. It still had the foam shield with a tiny crack in the corner from when Riley had knocked it over last summer. Familiar. Grounding. I plugged it in, opened the recording software, took a breath. My fingers trembled slightly as they hovered above the keyboard. Not from fear, from restraint. Because now the story would be told my way, not wrapped in Harper's venom, not filtered through hashtags or anonymous usernames. The red light blinked on. I leaned in. Hi, I'm Elena Morgan, and this is something no one has ever heard before. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not afraid anymore. I just want justice. The soft hum of the microphone filled the room like a steady heartbeat. The lights were dimmed low, casting golden halos across the wall, making my small apartment feel less like a war room and more like a place where truth could finally breathe. I adjusted my seat, double-checked the levels on the screen, and looked at Eli. He gave me a quiet nod from the corner where he sat at the laptop. Julia perched on the couch, headphones already on, watching me with an intensity that somehow steadied me. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. I leaned in closer to the mic.
The red light blinked once, steady and sure. "My name is Elena Morgan," I said, letting my voice rise just enough. "And this is not a story about revenge. It's a story about truth, about what happens when silence is used against you, and when you choose to speak anyway." The words spilled in rhythm, measured but sharp. I walked listeners through everything: the $20,000, the hospital lie, the Thanksgiving dinner with no seat, the way Harper had twisted every detail and weaponized our family history for sympathy online. "Some people think loyalty means keeping quiet," I said at one point, "but sometimes silence is the loudest betrayal." I recited the timeline. I named names. And then, just before the 20-minute mark, I clicked the file labeled harpercafe.m4a and dragged it into the podcast sequence. A beat of silence. Then her voice filled the track. "You really think your mother is going to die? I thought you were smarter." Julia's eyes narrowed as she watched the waveform move. I couldn't tell if it was satisfaction or disbelief in her face. Maybe both. Eli adjusted the gain slightly to balance the volume, then let it roll. The recording ran uninterrupted, raw, untouched. I ended the episode with a quiet exhale. If you've ever been made to feel small in a room you helped build, this story is for you. If you've ever been called ungrateful for drawing a boundary, I see you. And if you've ever been used by your own family, maybe this episode can help you take your story back. When it ended, we didn't speak. Eli uploaded it with the title Julia had suggested weeks ago: "The Cost of Being the Good Daughter." The file went live at 10:14 p.m. We posted the link to Elderbright's newsletter, then quietly passed it to a few journalists who'd previously covered digital abuse and financial exploitation. Julia clicked the final send with a satisfied breath. "Let the world watch," she whispered. We waited. At midnight, it was on the front page of Reddit's Family Dynamics board. By 2 a.m., it was trending on Apple Podcasts' What's Hot section. Comments poured in. Some angry, some disbelieving, others eerily familiar. Strangers recognizing pieces of themselves in my words. Then, just as I was about to shut my eyes for the first time in 24 hours, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I hadn't saved, but recognized instantly. "Elena, we need to talk. There's something you should know." The last person I thought would be on my side was the first to send evidence. The text still glowed on my phone as I stepped out of the car, the cold morning air biting at my cheeks. The park was almost unchanged. Same cracked bench beneath the elm tree, same walking path lined with faded white stones. Only the years between us had shifted. Michael was already there, hood pulled low, hands buried deep in his coat pockets. When we were kids, we used to come here and trade baseball cards, talk about dreams. I hadn't seen him in nearly a decade. He stood when I approached, awkward smile barely forming. "Hey, Lena." "Michael," I said cautiously. You sent the message? He nodded and gestured toward the bench. You okay with sitting? I sat slowly, still clutching my bag, unsure whether this was a warning or a lifeline. I listened to your podcast, he began, voice low. All of it. I stayed silent. I wasn't going to say anything, honestly, he went on, but after hearing Harper's voice on that recording, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. He pulled out a small envelope from his coat. Thick, old, taped shut. This, he said, placing it in my hands, is from 2021. I started collecting things when I noticed Harper doing shady stuff. I thought I was being paranoid. But then, he trailed off as I opened the flap. Inside, printed emails, screenshots of texts, grainy photos of bank transfers, and folders labeled with names I hadn't seen in years. One thread caught my eye. Harper had used my mom's email to approve a mortgage application for short-term investment purposes. What is this? I whispered. Harper convinced Aunt Janice to mortgage the house, Michael said. Claimed she'd double the money in 6 months through crypto. Lost it all. Your mom paid it off behind closed doors. Didn't want anyone to know. I stared at the photos. Harper holding a signed power of attorney form, a bank statement showing a massive withdrawal, an email where she pretended to be my mom, confirming the funds. You knew this? I asked, stunned. I suspected, he admitted. But your mom made me promise not to dig. She said Harper needed a fresh start. I didn't agree, but I kept quiet. My throat tightened. Why now? Because your silence is over, he said. And honestly, I'm tired of pretending she's some genius when she's just a con artist with good lipstick. I tried to laugh. Failed. Michael leaned back, gaze fixed on the old fountain across the path. There's more, he added. Stuff that might hurt. Stuff about your dad, too. I turned to him slowly. What else do I know? He met my eyes without flinching. Yes, but you have to be prepared. My mother changed her will, but Harper hid it, and no one suspected. Snow hadn't fallen, but the sky above the Simpson and Green building looked as if it might. Gray, heavy, waiting to break. I walked through the glass doors with my heart in my throat, Eli's hand gently brushing mine before we separated at the front desk. Ms. Morgan? A young receptionist smiled nervously. Attorney Green is waiting for you in conference room B, the last workday before Christmas. Everything felt quiet, too still, as if the city itself were holding its breath. I stepped into the room where Green was already seated, a silver-haired woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a gaze like a blade. She gestured toward the seat opposite her. Thanks for coming on short notice. Eli joined via speakerphone, and Michael's face appeared in the corner of my tablet, his expression taut. I barely sat down before I spoke. You said there was something about the will. Green nodded. I've gone through every version your mother filed with our office. There was a change made 2 years ago. Significant. I sat up straighter. And she amended her will in October 2021, Green said calmly. In that version, the majority of the estate, the house, retirement accounts, and 2 smaller properties, were left to you. My lips parted, but no sound came. Green continued. She cited your contributions to the family over the years, especially financial. Michael blinked, visibly stunned. Wait, so Harper wasn't the primary heir? No, Green said. She was left the Mercedes and a small mutual fund. That's it. I exhaled shakily. Then why has everyone believed otherwise? Green leaned back, folding her hands. Because the original will was marked as withdrawn, shortly after your mother's hospitalization was announced. That's highly irregular. I pulled out my phone. Can I see the document? She slid a folder across the table. Inside, crisp paper, blue ink signature, notarized seal. Janice Morgan. My mother, date, October 13th, 2021. I stared at it as if it might disappear. The handwriting was unmistakable. She hadn't changed her mind. She hadn't abandoned me. Harper had just hidden the truth. I snapped a photo and then another, careful, methodical. Each line, each signature. I sent them immediately to myself, Julia, and my cloud storage, then looked up at Green. What happens now? That depends on you, she said. You can initiate private arbitration with your sister and the family. Or, she paused, then looked me dead in the eye. You can take her to court. Publicly. Eli's voice crackled through the speaker. Elena, whatever you decide, we're behind you. Michael nodded from the screen. Let's make sure no one hides the truth again. I closed the folder gently, my fingers brushing the embossed edge. The weight of the decision settled over me like snowfall. Green asked softly, do you want to settle privately or go to court? I emailed every single person who read the article that defamed me, with full evidence. The sun hadn't even risen, but the light from my office monitors painted long shadows across the floor. I hadn't slept. None of us had. The air was thick with coffee, tension, and something sharper. Purpose. Julia was hunched over the keyboard, her fingers flying. Eli stood by the printer, stacking documents. Michael sat on the edge of my desk, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with the legal team. This wasn't a team anymore. It was a war room. I hit send on the final batch of emails, PDFs, links to the podcast, the notarized will, the audio files. Everything was packaged neatly, professionally. Truth with timestamps, receipts with names, all directed to journalists, Reddit moderators, business partners, even the local PTA president who once reposted the smear article about me. They can't unsee it now, Julia muttered, clicking publish on our master rebuttal blog post. It's out there. I turned to Eli. The summons? Delivered at 7:14 a.m., her lawyer signed for it. He confirmed. Michael leaned over with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Check this out. He tapped play on his phone. It was a short video. Grainy, low-res. Harper standing outside a black car after Mom's funeral. Laughing, not a soft chuckle. A loud, careless laugh, the kind that doesn't belong to grief. Her sunglasses were pushed up on her head, her phone in hand. I'm free, she said to someone off-screen. No more babysitting an old lady with opinions. I felt my breath hitch. Julia's knuckles turned white. Eli cursed under his breath. We've held back long enough, I said quietly. Within the hour, my inbox exploded. Journalists responded, some with apologies, others requesting interviews.
A local station picked up the podcast's first clip, replaying Harper's voice with my narration layered beneath. You still believe Mom's really sick? She had said. The soundbite went viral. BuzzFeed, The Atlantic, even a few niche Reddit YouTubers joined in. Suddenly, I wasn't the bitter daughter who stormed off at Thanksgiving. I was the woman who refused to be erased. Our podcast episode, The Cost of Being the Good Daughter, was rebranded overnight into a full docuseries pitch. A producer emailed, "There's power in silent daughters who stop being silent." By mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Harper. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. "What do you want?" she spat. Her voice was lower than usual, not angry, cornered. I didn't blink. "Justice," I said calmly, "and to stand alone in the ruins I created." I ended the call. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Julia whispered, "She doesn't even know the second episode's going live tonight." I exhaled slowly, watching the city begin to wake through the window. Let them watch. I stand in front of the old house. Everything is the same as when my mother was alive, except for the lies that have rotted inside. The wind picked up the fallen leaves along the walkway as I stood at the gate, holding the court order in one hand and my breath in the other. The Morgan house hadn't changed. The porch light still flickered like it always did when the sensor failed. The roses along the fence bloomed despite the season, as if they didn't know who had been living inside. Eli parked across the street and waited, engine humming softly. Julia offered to come, but this part, I had to do alone. The officer glanced down at the document and back at me. "You're Elena Morgan?" "Yes." He nodded. "She's inside. Your lawyer's on the way?" "He'll meet us at the door." We walked up together. Each step felt heavier than the last. Somewhere behind the curtains, I saw a flicker. Movement. The door opened before we even knocked. "What do you think you're doing?" Harper's voice hit like shattered glass. The officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, we're here to serve and enforce a court order transferring control of this property back to Elena Morgan." "This is my house," she screeched. "She abandoned it. She abandoned Mom." My lawyer appeared beside me, calm and precise. "Ms. Harper Morgan, you were informed via legal notice 3 days ago. This property is now legally in Elena's name, per the terms of the original will." Harper's eyes darted to the paper. "She forged it." "I'll prove it." "You're welcome to do that in court," he said. "But today, you need to vacate the premises." Harper's rage was operatic. She shouted, flung accusations, paced like a caged animal. Her performance, complete with crocodile tears and a cracked voice, did nothing to sway the officer. "You have 10 minutes to collect what you need. Then you're leaving," he said. She stopped. Her glare cut through me. "You think this changes anything? Everyone saw who you really are." "No," I said quietly. "They saw who you are." She vanished upstairs, stomping every step. 10 minutes later, Harper descended, suitcase rolling behind her like a reluctant shadow. She passed by me without a word, eyes refusing to meet mine. She paused at the door, turned once, and spat, "Rot in it!" And then she was gone. The officer nodded at me. "You can go in." I stepped over the threshold. Silence greeted me, not cold or hostile, but waiting. Dust hung in the beams of morning light that streamed through the kitchen window. The scent of lemon oil lingered faintly in the hallway. Every picture was still on the wall. My mother's old slippers were by the couch. A stack of unopened mail sat by the stairwell. It was as if time had paused the day she passed. My steps were slow, reverent. I reached the base of the stairs and looked up. The door to her bedroom stood slightly ajar. I hesitated, then climbed. The hinges creaked as I pushed the door open fully. The room smelled of lavender and old books. On the nightstand was a jewelry box I hadn't seen in years. And next to it, a sealed envelope. My name written in my mother's delicate script. My heart stopped. I reached for it with trembling hands. Justice was almost done, but the truth was still unfolding. Justice doesn't come quickly, but when it does, it makes things impossible to go back to the way they were. The courtroom was quiet, not solemn, not heavy, just quiet, like the collective exhale of a truth finally spoken. Harper sat behind the defense table, her expression carved in stone. She didn't glance at me once, not even when the judge read the charges aloud. Misuse of inheritance, intentional defamation, obstruction. The words were surgical. The gavel, when it struck, didn't echo. It landed. Clean. Final. "Ms. Elena Morgan," the judge said, "do you wish to make a statement?" I rose slowly. No trembling this time. "I've been asked if I want to forgive," I began, voice steady. "But I think we asked the wrong question. I don't forgive what was done. I forgive myself. For staying quiet too long. For thinking love meant enduring abuse. For believing I had to earn a place in my own family." I let that sit, then nodded once. "That's all?" I turned without another look. Outside, the world had moved on. Cameras blinked but didn't flash. The news anchors said my name without venom now. Local woman wins justice after inheritance scheme. The Morgan family scandal exposed. But I didn't stop to listen. Eli waited by the car. He didn't need to speak. His hand in mine said everything. Back at the office, Julia had a cake on the break table. Vanilla, with blue frosting. 1,000,000 streams. Elena's justice. She was wiping her eyes as I entered. "It's not about the number," she said quickly. "It's about the people who wrote us, who said your voice was theirs." Michael handed me a printed letter. This came in through the P.O. box. I skimmed it. Someone from Vermont, estranged from her mother after refusing to co-sign a loan. She had listened to every episode. She was no longer ashamed. That night, we went live one final time. I sat in front of the microphone, the studio now its own kind of sacred space. Eli adjusted the levels, gave me the thumbs up. "This is the final episode," I said. But not the end. I announced the new fund, a scholarship for women who had been financially manipulated by their own families. We called it Riley's Light, named after the daughter who'd asked, "Why didn't they invite me?" The inbox lit up faster than I could read. One subject line stood out. It had no name, just 5 words. "I'm the one you never knew." I opened it. I've been through the same thing. I've never told anyone. But now, I'm ready to speak up. I looked at Eli. He raised an eyebrow. "Season 2?" he asked. I smiled. Not wide, not triumphant, just enough. "Some truths," I said, closing my laptop, "are worth the wait. They say betrayal by blood cuts the deepest." I used to believe that too, until I learned how much strength it takes to stitch yourself back together without the ones who tore you apart. In the end, it wasn't just Harper's cruelty that hurt. It was the silence of those who watched and did nothing. The kind of silence that feels like a verdict long before a trial has even begun. When I received that text, "Mom's in the hospital," I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money. I packed my bags. I brought my daughter back to a house that never felt like home. But what I walked into wasn't a crisis. It was a performance. One designed to humiliate me, discredit me, and strip away what little dignity I had left in their eyes. 12 chairs at the table, none for me. No thanks for the money, no apology, no defense when Harper looked me dead in the eye and said, "I wish you were never born." That moment could have broken me. Instead, it clarified something. I was no longer obligated to play the part of the quiet daughter, the forgiving one, the one who bends so others don't break. So I began to dig. Behind Harper's lies were more lies. A hidden will, stolen money, manipulated documents, a trail so messy even she couldn't keep her story straight. And with every piece of evidence I gathered, I began to reclaim the space they tried to push me out of, not just in the house, but in the family narrative they thought they could rewrite without me. For years, I thought silence was the high road, but silence can also be complicity. My podcast didn't just expose Harper, it exposed a system, familial, cultural, psychological, that teaches women like me to endure instead of resist. That rewards those who scream louder while punishing those who simply want to be believed. But once I spoke, others followed. Messages from strangers, stories that echoed mine, people who had never dared confront the ones who stole from them. Money, identity, worth. Until now. Harper thought she won when she isolated me, but isolation gave me clarity. She thought I wouldn't fight back. But I had truth on my side, and truth doesn't beg to be heard, it demands it. And the moment the will surfaced, signed, dated, witnessed, the game changed. It wasn't about inheritance anymore. It was about restoration. The courtroom didn't erase the damage, but it acknowledged it. That mattered. Seeing Harper on a screen, forced to face what she did, not just to me, but to our mother, to Michael, to the legacy she tried to rewrite, wasn't satisfying in a petty way. It was sobering. Because justice doesn't feel like revenge, it feels like release. I didn't stand there hoping she'd apologize. I didn't need her to. I needed her stopped. Now, when I speak into a microphone, I don't just tell my story, I tell ours. The women who've been manipulated out of their futures, the daughters who were good until being good was no longer safe, the people who dared to say enough, even when the cost was everything. Some truths are painful. Some come too late to mend relationships, but they still matter. Because truth doesn't lose value with time, it gains clarity. The house is mine now, but I don't live in it. I left it behind, just like I left behind the version of me who needed their approval to feel whole. And when people ask me what justice feels like, I tell them, it feels like walking into the ruins of everything they built on lies and refusing to bow, because no wall of deception can stand forever against the tide of truth. And sometimes, justice doesn't roar. It whispers, I remember everything. If you've stayed until this point, thank you. Thank you for listening to a story that's not just about money, but about dignity, about silence, and about reclaiming a voice I should never have lost in the first place. Maybe, somewhere out there, you've been me too. Maybe you've stayed up at 2 a.m., sending anxious texts, transferring money because someone said, the family needs you, hearing words that cut deeper than any argument, and wondering, am I overreacting? Or am I really the bad daughter they say I am? Here's the truth. No one has the right to steal your peace. No one has the right to rewrite your story and then demand your silence. And no one has the right to call you ungrateful just because you decided to stand up. I've lost a lot to get here. Lost faith in people I called family, lost job offers, lost countless nights of sleep, and almost lost myself. But in the end, the one thing I held on to was the truth. I didn't make this video for pity. I don't need anyone to fight my battles for me. I only need one thing. If you're going through something similar, if you've been blamed, manipulated, erased from your own family narrative, remember this. You're not alone. You're not wrong. And you have every right to say, enough. If you've ever been called the ungrateful daughter, the selfish sister, or the one ruining family peace, I hope this story gives you a little courage. Courage to keep your receipts, courage to leave texts unanswered, courage to choose truth over temporary peace. If you want to share your story, drop it in the comments below. If you can't, just leave a single dot. We'll know, and we'll understand. And if you want more people to hear stories like this, help me out with a like, a share, or just by hitting subscribe. Because this won't be the last story. Too many people out there are still being blamed, still being silenced, still waiting for someone to remind them. They're not crazy. They're not selfish. They're just surviving. And if you're still listening at this point, here's my promise. We'll meet again in the next story about daughters who stayed silent for far too long, but not anymore.